Morning, everybody. Today, the Church of the United States celebrates what we call Catechetical Sunday, the liturgical kickoff, if you will, to our faith formation programs throughout the year. And that's what we're calling it now, is faith formation. It seems that name's always changing. I mean, we came up, we always called it CCD as kids, but then we were yelled at by the DREs for calling it CCD, but I can't remember they didn't call it religious ed then. What do they call it then, do you know? It's what we did every afternoon during the school year, basically. Catechism classes or, whatever it was. I went to religious education. Now it's faith formation. That's actually a much better description. And maybe they should even change it from Catechetical Sunday to Faith Formation Sunday. Because here's the thing. Catechesis is where we learn the basics of the faith. We learn about our practices as Catholics. But what happens when we receive those sacraments of initiation, our baptism and Eucharist and our confirmation, is we enter into a relationship with the Lord, a lifetime process of conversion. Meaning we have to move from the catechesis to the theology, to what St. Anselm called faith-seeking understanding. And that's lifelong, because as we grow and our experiences happen and our ability to think and take on abstract thought, that needs to grow as well. And faith is an exercise of the mind just as much as it is an exercise of the heart. And the gospel this weekend really emphasizes that point. We're hearing from 7 verses today from Mark's chapter 9. And to understand the context of what I'm talking about, we have to look at the whole of Mark chapter 9. Mark chapter 9 begins with what we call the Transfiguration. We've heard that in the other Gospels. The mountaintop experience where Jesus is transfigured before Peter, James, and John, where he's seen conversing with Moses and Elijah. And the glory that shines from him, and his cloak is the brightest of whites. And they get a glimpse of the future glory of Jesus as the Son of God. And if that wasn't a big enough, mind-blowing experience enough, in the midst of that, they hear the voice of God himself from heaven cry out, "This is my beloved Son." That's a pretty big deal for these three apostles, a glimpse of this divine majesty in a way that none of us have. And so they're feeling pretty empowered to be privileged to be in this relationship with the Son of God, because God just told them that this is the Son of God. Things are going pretty well. They go from the mountaintop experience in Mark chapter 9 to what they call the healing of the possessed boy, where the father's pleading with Jesus to heal his son because the demon puts him in these convulsions that threatens his life. And not only is the boy healed, but the father is healed in a spiritual way. And the climactic moment of that story is the father crying out, "I believe, help my unbelief." Two incredible stories of Jesus, two spiritual mountaintop experiences, if you will, that kind of energize us and energize the followers of Jesus. And we go from that high energy, high majesty, powerful experiences of God to the Son of Man is to be handed over to men and they will kill him. Wait, what? How's that fit into all of this? That seems to be kind of a killjoy moment there, don't you think, of that whole chapter? So who wanted to go here? But here's the thing. We're being reminded by Mark that you can't tell the Jesus story without the passion, without the paschal mystery. Because you need the paschal mystery and the passion to get to the resurrection and the new life promised. Yes, we have these encounters along the way that energize, but we also have those realities, the realities of sin and darkness in the world. You can't read all of Mark chapter 9 without going to this little bit here. The story is incomplete. In fact, all the stories in Mark chapter 9 mean nothing without today's story as well. A few years ago, I was at a conference for campus ministry, and one of the keynote speakers was Archbishop Chaput, the Archbishop of Philadelphia. And he mentioned in it might have been the question and answer after his talk, he mentioned that there's a tension in the Christian life that we don't like to talk about. There's joy and energy from knowing God's presence and love. When we have those encounters with God's love and presence, we're flying high spiritually. There's great consolation that comes from his graces and his promises that give us strength to persevere in the day-to-day. But there's a tension because we're called as disciples of Christ to a life of continuing conversion, of uniting ourselves in mind and heart to God, to Christ, who is perfection. We are called to a journey of being perfected. And every one of us, this may be earth-shattering to some, but every one of us here are imperfect beings. We're the ones that need to change in order to become perfected. And that's what happens in that process of conversion. And that's the point of Mark's gospel today. Because that process of becoming perfect isn't easy. It means we have to change. We have to let go of our notions of how things should be or how things are. And we need to unite ourselves to God, who is perfection and truth and joy and peace. The spiritual life can become very comfortable, and we can become satisfied with where we are. Yet Jesus calls us to something higher. He calls us to participate in the divine life itself, to be nothing less than other Christs in the world. This past week, in all of the buzz about the Pope's coming week to the United States, there was a story of a congressman who is boycotting Pope Francis's speech to Congress. He's boycotting the speech because he doesn't like what the Pope has to say about climate change, and about immigration, or about the economy. And he stated that he'll attend if the Pope stuck to Christian theology. The congressman may be very disappointed in the catechism of the Catholic Church. All of those things are in there. But I don't want to make fun of the congressman, because here's the reality. Every single one of us in this church has had a similar position as the congressman. There's something about the gospel that we don't like at times, that challenges us. And that's why we're called, reminded by the Lord of our need for that continued formation, continuing to learn, to understand why we're being challenged and what God is trying to teach us. Fulton Sheen once said, "Millions of people hate us for what they think we are. Only a few hate us for what we actually are." We need to constantly study, constantly look at this relationship, constantly understand who we really are and what the church really, God's church, really teaches. The gospel is not about making us comfortable. It's meant to help us grow into the people that God has created us to be. And we're going to be challenged along the way. Whenever we grow, we get challenged along the way. Heck, look at the teenage years. If that's not evidence, what else do you need? If it's not the gospel's teaching on immigration, perhaps it's the gospel's teaching on life or something else. There's something out there that's going to challenge us. And in that challenge, God in his church doesn't reject us, doesn't push us away, but invites us to this table, invites us to listen, invites us to be healed, and gives us the graces we need to be challenged. So he offers us the grace and love that we may continue to that we may draw strength from him as we go through that process of being transformed more and more into the likeness of God.